Today's video is for the wives who see their husbands, who are most likely farmers, ranchers, or ag business owners, struggling in today's economic environment and how you can support them and help them through this struggling time. So let's get into it. All right, guys, so today's video is going to be a little bit more delicate here. We're talking about some sensitive topics here and subjects. When you're talking about marriage and things like that, there's just more sensitivity around it, right? Now, getting started with today's video here, if you are somebody who has a struggling husband, right, you can see just in their eyes, right, and their energy when they walk in the household that they're just struggling. Not only physically because they're exhausted and they're working so many hours, but also just mentally, right? There's a lot of things that aren't working very well inside of today's economic environment. There's a lot of variables at play here, and it's causing a lot of people just to struggle financially, and it feels like they're just losing year after year after year after year. And I totally get that. But from your perspective, though, when you see this struggling person walking in through the door, the number one thing that I'm going to push you to do right off the bat is just try to view the world through their eyes, right? And this is going to be the number one lesson I always try to teach my kids as they get older, is to understand that every person in the world has a different perspective when they open their eyes and they see the world. And this perspective, or what we call the frame inside the legacy farmer, is made up of their stories, their beliefs, their laws, their religion, things that they were conditioned to believe as truth as they were growing up in things like that. Now, this is why everybody has a different perspective. So at the end of the day, I challenge you to really kind of take a step back, right? And put yourself in the position where you're trying to view the world through your husband's eyes. Now, if you're watching this video, I'm going to take the automatic assumption that your husband is a very good man deep down, right? He's working really hard. He's trying to support his family. He probably has a lot of the same characteristics that I do. And I'm very old school when it comes to just how I think about my responsibilities to my family, which is number one, provide for my family, and number two, protect. Now, obviously, when somebody's struggling, you need to be careful about the stories that are running through their mind, because if a man does not feel like he is providing at the level that he can for his family, he is going to be destroying himself mentally. I'm speaking about this from experience. They are going to feel a tremendous amount of guilt and shame and just feel like a freaking failure. And they are going to constantly question, why isn't any of this working? And what am I even doing here? Like, why am I even alive if I can't figure this out? And for a lot of men, they've been struggling for years, right? There's just such a massive mental battle that they're going through day by day, especially when things aren't working here. And so the number one thing you can do to just really support your husband in that moment is to try to view the world through his perspective and the things that he's struggling with, but also to just consider the stories that are running through that man's mind, because I'm just going to tell you, they're a lot darker than what a man will ever share with you out in the open. I'm just being 100% transparent with you there. There is a massive problem with this going on in this industry, which is why when it comes to farming and ranching and this industry, the suicide rate is tremendously higher than other industries that exist inside the US today. And so the number one thing, again, for you to do right off the bat is try to understand where they're coming from and ultimately move past all the stories, right? Because again, when things are tough, and you find your husband struggling, which means finances are struggling, which means the family's struggling, it's really easy as husband and wife for you guys to turn against each other. And I'm speaking about that because I went through it and it was very challenging for us and we had to get through that. But it's so easy for us to create stories about the other person when things are tough versus removing all the stories, looking past those and seeing, okay, what are the true characteristics of this person, right? So like for me, for example, when we were really struggling financially back in 2016, 2017, 2018, it was really easy for my wife and I to have stories about each other. It was really easy for her to have stories about me and why I left the banking industry, threw us into this financial uncertainty and kind of chaos in our lives. And for what? Right? I just continued to struggle every single year, telling my wife, just stick with me, just hold on, we'll be fine. It's so easy to create stories there, basically overshadow what I was trying to do for our family, right? And vice versa is also true. I'm not saying that, my wife just did that to me. I've done that to her in a ton of different ways, just when it comes to raising the kids and things like that. And so what I'm telling you though, is to try to look past that and really see like, what is your husband trying to do? Because at the end of the day, when I'm looking through like my time frame and what I went through back then, what I wanted for my family and how I saw my job responsibilities for my family were, number one, to provide for them, and number two, to protect. And the thing is, if you are not able to provide for your family at the level that you think you should be able to, then you most likely are not going to be able to protect them at the level that you want to, which means as a husband, the stories that your husband is telling himself is that he is failing. Right? He is failing as a husband, he's failing as a father and things like that. So again, the number one thing that you can do in this type of experience here, in this type of situation, is try to view the world through his eyes and understand what's really going on for him. Because again, the stories that are going through your husband's mind are honestly probably a lot darker than what he would ever share with you in any type of conversation there, because he tries to protect you, right? And I think that's one thing that we inherently all do as husbands, is it's our job to protect our family again and protect them from hard things that we're going through as well. And that we always see ourselves as, trying to be that that rock, right, for the family when it's going through a hard time, which means we want to mask our emotions and try to hide what's really going on for us. And again, I'm just telling you, there's a lot of things going on with your husband that he may not be sharing publicly or with you. And that's why it's important for you to try to look through the world from his perspective and really see what's going on for him internally. Now, the next thing that you really need to understand here and things that you can do to help out your husband is understand that he has a massive fear of being exposed, right? And we've seen this time and time again, not only with myself, I've experienced this internally, but also too, working with 300 plus family farm operations over the years. We've had over 2,000 people apply to be a part of Legacy Farmer, meaning we've talked to those people on the phone. And there's one common thing about most men is that we hate being exposed, right? We hate being exposed for our faults, for our weaknesses and things like that. Because again, we're supposed to be the protectors. We're supposed to be the providers for our family. We're supposed to be the rock that keeps everything together there. A lot of men, they fear one thing massively, and that is being exposed, because that exposure is going to really hurt their ego, hurt their pride, hurt everything about them internally. Again, men fear failure. And if you're exposed for those weaknesses, then the stories start for your husband, right? And then again, I'm talking about this from experience here as well. So you as a spouse really need to understand the fears that your husband has around being exposed. Now, I'm not saying just to avoid any type of conversation around this or not try to expose him. But what I'm saying though, is you're going to have to peel these things back like the layers of an onion, and it's going to have to be strategic, and it's going to happen days, maybe weeks at a time, right? A lot of people, we get impatient, which I totally get it. I'm that way as well. And we want the answer now, right? If we want to have a crucial conversation with our spouse, we want to peel back all the layers right then and there. And that's just not going to happen. The more you try to do that, the more your husband is just going to shut down, right? These are things that you really have to ease into, because men, for the most part, we're not taught how to really deal with these emotions, deal with these feelings. And again, we were told as a kid growing up, toughen up, no crying, I don't care, nobody cares about your feelings, just get the job done, like that type of stuff there. And if you were raised with that kind of conditioning from a very young age, man, trying to get a person to open up when they're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, or even later than that in life, it's going to be very difficult there. So as a spouse, if you're wanting to talk about these things with your husband, it's going to have to be strategic, and you're going to have to peel back these things over time. And again, just very strategic about what you're saying, when you're saying it, and most importantly, how you're saying it as well. Now, the last piece here is going to revolve around a conversation of finances. So we have a lot of customers coming in. And again, guys, just in building Legacy Farmer, we have a software inside of Legacy Farmer that we call Farmer Metrics here. And I built this software. We've been building it with our customers since 2021. And when I look at all the challenges that are facing farmers, ranchers, and ag business owners in the industry today, the number one way that I can try to contribute and help deal with that problem, and the problems I'm talking about are the stress, the anxiety, the suicide rates we have, the financial lack of clarity, right, or uncertainty that people are dealing with, and it just bleeds over into every area of life, especially your marriage and your family life at home. And this is what makes it very difficult. This is why divorces happen. These are why fights happen and things like that. And the number one way that I know how to contribute and help with that financial uncertainty is to help people organize their finances. And that's what we do with Farmer Metrics. Now, I can tell you from experience, we have had so many members come in over the years where just getting clarity in the numbers has helped them tremendously as a couple. And I'm not saying that both spouses need to be involved in the finances and entering data and stuff like that. Maybe just one of you is doing that. But at the end of the day, for both of you to be conversing and know where things are at inside the operation and just have the truth right there, right? Simplified, and you can clearly see what the pros and cons are in the operation and things like that, and just where you're at financially. I can just tell you from experience, it has relieved so much stress, anxiety, and ultimately just stopped a lot of dumb fighting and arguments between spouses that have come into Legacy Farm over the years, just because for the first time, man, everything's out in the open, right? We can see where we're at financially. We know what we need to do. We know things we need to change and stuff like that. So at the end of the day too, if your husband is struggling and you know deep down he doesn't know where he's at financially and things like that, that could be another way for you to really step in and help him and getting him to, one, either go figure out how to get the finances, organize himself, or two, pushing him to go find the resources like Legacy Farmer that we've built out there to help people really master their finances so they just know where the heck they're at, guys. Again, I talk about the serious issues that we're dealing with inside the industry. That's the number one way that I know how to help it. That's literally at the foundation of it all. The way that we kill financial scarcity or uncertainty or confusion and things like that is to get the numbers structured and organized and give people the insight and the knowledge that honestly traditional education doesn't teach us, right? It does not teach us these things here. This is all real world application type things that we're dealing with here. And the software that we built out is literally built to simplify those big financial decisions and give our customers the clarity that they need into the finances inside of the operation. conversation there, which again has been proven to just decrease stress and anxiety across the board. And for the first time, give people some hope and confidence and clarity in what they're going to do for the next 12 months, 24 months, and just where they're going in the future, right? At the end of the day, I think the number one thing that families and men specifically struggle with, and myself included, is just the uncertainty that we live with in this world. And this uncertainty is not from a place of just, where are we going to be at business-wise, but will this uncertainty go so deep that it'll impact my ability to provide and protect my family? You know what I mean? That's what I take everything back to. And again, that's really heavy for men, right? And so as the spouse at home and trying to support your husband and things like that, I think it's really important for all these things to be discussed. I think it's really important for you to strategically peel back the layers in your husband and get them to open up about these things that they're struggling with. Because at the end of the day too, I talk about the number of conversations we've had with people that have applied to be a legacy farmer. We've had so many people come in over the years where they had a conversation, but then they waited a year or 2 years before they actually came in because they thought things would get better or they wanted to see what happened, and nothing changed, right? They're coming back because they hit basically rock bottom and something now has to change. Otherwise, maybe they go under, marriage falls apart, whatever, right? There's any number of scenarios there. And it's not always doomsday scenarios like that, but people that we are fearful of being exposed. We are fearful of making changes. And because of that, it causes us to kick the can down the road when knowing deep down that it's just going to get worse, right? We are eventually going to hit rock bottom. And so anyways, I share that with you because don't wait for these things just to solve themselves. Don't hope for it to get better. Start taking action today on each one of these things. If you're starting out from, point number one, where we talked about where you're trying to look through your husband's eyes and see his perspective on the things that he's dealing with and really understand the weight of things that he's carrying, that's the first point there. And don't just think about this, literally take down notes, because just for you to really understand that, it's going to take a different way of you just thinking as a person, right? You have to develop this level of awareness that allows you to see the world through another person's eyes, which just doesn't come overnight, right? And that's one thing I've learned just through marketing and sales and systems and building out a software for our customers and things like that, right? It takes time to develop the skill sets to see the world through somebody else's eyes and understand why they're doing, what they're struggling with, and things like that. So my friends, at the end of the day, I hope this video was valuable for you and gave you some more insight into the things and struggles that your husband's going through. If you have any additional questions, make sure you drop them in the comments below. That way, if I didn't handle every thing in the video today, which I'm guessing I probably didn't because there's a lot to uncover here, make sure you drop your questions because then I'll record another video and kind of handle those ones directly there and provide you some insight and content on that side of things as well. So thank you for watching this week's video, and we'll see you in the one next week.